Hello, and welcome to the final episode of a week of mukbang videos for me. This is the live one. I can only do one per week usually, but this is the one for this week. The rest of them were recorded beforehand, and I'm going to tell you this is hard. This is so hard. My system can't do this. I went 10 years barely being able to eat food because of a chronic condition. And so my stomach isn't big enough to. This makes me sick. This is hard. But I am exploring a lot of these foods. So today we're looking at American, I guess, call them classic American foods. But these are like the freezer version of these. So we've got like the burgers and fries. These are the little sliders from White Castle with the fries. Corn dogs, which I have never had. I have never had a corn dog. Got on this one, we've got chicken nuggets, onion rings, and a Philly cheese. This is an embarrassment of a Philly cheesesteak, to be honest. And then, of course, the American classic of mac and cheese, only more American than before because it's bacon mac and cheese. So I'm going to try each of these and see if I pop. No, I'm going to try each of these, and these are all of these were picked up, except for the mac and cheese was on a shelf prepackaged, which is a little creepy to me, but everything else is a freezer section food item. Now, usually when I do these are microwave dinners. Most of these were not microwaved. The mac and cheese was microwaved. The White Castle burgers were microwaved, which you can tell by looking at the horrible distortion of the bun. I did preheat the Philly steak and cheese in the microwave, but like my family's from the area near Philly, and you do not make a Philly steak and cheese in a microwave. So I popped it in the oven to finish it off. But yeah, anyway, so I'm gonna give these a try and see how. Where should I start? I feel like since I've never had a corn dog, I should get those while they're hot. Oh, but I'm pretty sure those are gonna mess me up. All right, we'll give it a go anyway. The corn bit was like a cornbread is cooled off around the outside, but the hot dog in the middle is not. It's sort of weird. Like I don't really understand what all the hype behind it is. I mean, the cornbread strikes me as a little sweet. I don't know that I care for sweet around a hot dog. It's like it's less like a cornbread and almost like a corn cupcake. I might be pushing it a little far. It's a corn muffin, but I think it's just one of those foods you have to be raised with. I'm a little sad about that. I had hopes. Honestly, I think I'd probably just like the hot dog better. Okay, now these White Castle sliders. I used to have a housemate who, back when I couldn't eat anything, he was courteous enough, and I do appreciate it honestly, because I'm a person who likes the smell and the enjoyment of other people enjoying foods. And so when he popped these into the microwave, I could smell them across the house. They smelled so good. And he clearly liked them because he'd buy them on a regular basis for a little while. So there's a part of me is like, I can't wait to try this. But I have to admit, looking at these patties, they're not a patty. That's just a thin slice of beef in there. Let's see if I can get the top off. Oof, God, that's not attractive. Oh, and they punch holes in the patty too to give it, aeration so that it's not that if every five patties they cut up like this, they can make a whole new patty out of the pieces they cut out or anything. All right. But it's like an onion in the meat or the bun that just really makes it work. Is there something wrong with me? This is very dull. It smells better than it tastes. This, mm, it's not bad. It's more like a roll dipped in a cheesy gravy. I was really hoping for more of an onion kick to that. All right, so it comes with fries that I made too. I can't win with this stuff today. There's not a lot of crisp to it. I mean, they're baked fries, so maybe that's part of it. With a little cayenne and some salt, these wouldn't be bad. Or you could like pre-soak them with a little bit of bouillon before you toss them into a pan and golden fry them. These did not hold a crisp at all. They came out crispy, but they got soft quick. Mm-mm. All right. We'll revisit some of these and go through them a little as we go. Now, these are chicken nuggets, supposedly, but these are made with real meat, supposedly. Not that paste they extrude from a machine into oddly shaped pieces. So these are supposed to be better. I mean, honestly, they were the only ones I could find that didn't come in a gallon bucket or like a backpack-sized plastic bag. I don't need that many. I just need enough to go through the afternoon. And this is still just half, about a third to a half of them. So, yep, real meat. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. You can kind of see the grain of the meat in there. Those are actually all right. The breading is more of a breading than the batter that we kind of know from like McDonald's nuggets. I'm not sure which I prefer. This is a more crumbly crumb, and it's more realistic to breading. McDonald's nuggets are more of a almost like a tempura batter, and then deep fried. These are more like a pan fried breadcrumb coast. I do like the meat. That's pretty good. Okay, we've got a crumbly onion ring, so we should probably finish that guy off too, huh? Mm. Wow, okay. It's been so long since I had a good onion ring. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to look for the bag over there. It's like a something robins, brown robin, red robin style onion rings. And man, oh, that's the onion I'm looking for on those burgers, man. Actually, there's a small onion ring right here. I might tuck that on top of that little burger. Steak and cheese can wait. I'm not highly hopeful for that one. Mac and cheese. This is a Velveeta liquid gold, which is kind of creepy. A liquid gold mac and cheese, bacon mac and cheese, or some such thing. Ooh. Ooh. The noodles are mush. Noodles are very gluey. The bacon is. Oh, it's just it. It took me a second. I was going to say it almost like a fake bacon taste, but no, it's just a cold cheap bacon taste. And the cheese has that mild cheese whiz flavor to it. The Velveeta cheese. I have to say it. The mac and cheese container, when I was preparing it, sort of creeped me out. Because these noodles, you open up the packet and there's like the plastic film on top of the cup with the packet of the cheese on it. You peel the packet of cheese off, you pull an edge on this one open. I pulled it open and like they weren't like a dried noodle that you add water to. They're like a soft noodle. This sat on a shelf. It's not refrigerated. It's not freeze dried. It's just these soft noodles for God knows how long sitting on that shelf. And it has the pieces of bacon meat in it. So that's not refrigerated either. And all you do is microwave it with a slight opening in the film for about a minute. So you're not really cooking anything. You're just reheating it. And you squeeze out the like noodle of cheese that you mix into the whole thing. But when you pull the film off to add the cheese, there's liquid in the bottom of the container. And I'm like, what is that liquid and how long has it been sitting on shelves? Is it like a brine? Like, I don't, like, no part of that sounds like, it just makes me a little anxious about it. But it's food. And near as I can tell, they'd be in trouble. They'd pull it from the shelves if it hurt anybody. So that's there are other ways to make mac and cheese. I think if I were to go back into the ways that I would eat a mac and cheese dish when I was younger, it was rarely Velveeta. It was usually Kraft macaroni and cheese. And for me, the proper way to do it was to boil your noodles with the hot dogs in the water with the noodles. 2 hot dogs. And then when it comes time to drain the noodles, you pull the hot dogs aside and you cut them into thin slices. Set them aside while you take your packet of powdered cheese and you take a small, like, you ever go to the diners and they have those little patties of butter that are like pre-cut slices of butter? You just take that much butter with maybe a tablespoon of milk at the most. You melt them together in a bowl and you mix your powder until it forms a honkin' chunk that is still to some degree looking partly granule. Like it's still like it didn't all quite dissolve, but it still forms like a batter chunk on the bottom. You dump your hot noodles on top of that. You mix, and then you throw in the hot dog slices and you mix that up, and then you eat that. That is the way I used to do it. Nothing I disliked more than an overly milky cheese sauce. It's cheese sauce, not a milk sauce. I wanted that tartness, the saltiness from the cheese. Yeah, I suppose you could do it with bacon. My mom has a recipe for like home cooked mac and cheese, and it's a more creamy flavored cheese. It's a cheese sauce, so it is cream based, but it has like a couple of like high end cheeses to it. It's got some peas mixed into it, which is unusual but works, and bacon pieces in it. And it does have a tone very similar to a smoked Gouda within the cheese sauce. I don't think there was smoked Gouda in it, but it has like the bacon adds some of the smokiness to it, and whatever cheeses she had a similarity to a Gouda. And then you top it with breadcrumbs, like buttered breadcrumbs, and you bake it in a casserole dish, and they get crispy brown breadcrumbs at the top, bacon bits inside, and a few peas for texture and a little bit of flavoring that you wouldn't expect to work, but works. And because it's made with like a good noodle, it doesn't get as mush as this is. It's a pretty good dish. I might make it sometime. Not sure where she got the recipe. I'm trying to pace myself here because if the camera goes black and you hear a loud pop seconds before it goes black, you know it's me exploding. This is hard to do. I won't be doing large meals like this very often. Maybe at most, maybe once a month, but I might only do them every other month. I will look into the possibility in future of doing like a single food item, like revisiting some of the things I've eaten this past week's worth of videos. And like, okay, so how can I make these from scratch here? Like make my own noodles, make my own sauces. And what can I do with that? And I'll make the dish and I'll eat some of it myself. But this eating large quantities of food, I can't do that. I can't do that a lot. This has pretty much wrecked me this past few episodes of doing this. I think the one where I really started to feel it was the Italian food. I mean, the Hispanic food was a little rough by the end of that day, and that's just feeling like bloated and full and like sick. My stomach just doesn't have the size for this. Although, I should probably thank you guys. I put on some weight. I put on a little bit of weight doing this. And for me, that's a good thing. There's a long time where I couldn't put on any weight, and it was a struggle for a good long time. So it's good to have a little meat on my bones. But this is not really the healthiest way to do it. And it's certainly not the most comfortable or enjoyable way to do it. I think if I were to do this at a more gradual pace and do this a little bit more easily, I would like to do that. If you have a type of food that you'd like to see me eat, uh, or at least like to get my thoughts on because I haven't. There are all kinds of food that I haven't ever tried, and that's sort of why I do these taste tests. Is because for a very long time I was not able to eat pretty much any food, and so there was a lot like things that I never thought like, oh yeah, I'd love to try some Indian food. It was never even on my mind. It was always like, if I have to at some point, I'll eat that, and I'll give it a try. I'll explore. I'll find some things in those areas, and I'll look into that at some later date. And then there came a day where I didn't have that option anymore. I became too sick to eat even standard, capably available foods. I couldn't handle kiwi. I couldn't handle mushrooms. I couldn't handle eggs. I hard boiled 2 eggs, cut them in half, pulled the yolks out because they're the hardest part to digest, and just ate the whites. And I was sick for a week after that, and my system was so much more sensitive for the rest of the month. And it was just like, I can't do that. I couldn't eat potatoes. I couldn't eat rice. I couldn't eat corn. I couldn't eat bread. I couldn't eat pasta. I couldn't eat table sugar. I couldn't eat maple syrup. There was just like nothing, nothing. I lived off of the same meal, every day for years. And I mean like 8 years, where it was lean protein, peas, and carrots. And that was it. That's everything. Can you imagine that that's the only thing you're ever going to eat again? But the thing was, I got used to it. That was just what you did. That was my meal. Every time I ate, that's what my meal was. And so it wasn't like a huge like disappointment. It was just it's what you're used to eating. But the problem was that I couldn't digest anything else. And I couldn't eat in large amounts. So when I sat down to a meal, it was a small portion every 4 hours of those 3 food items. And early on, I was not getting enough caloric intake, and my weight just kept disappearing. And I got to about 40 pounds underweight, and it was just like, we need to make this stop. We need to find a way. And I found a way to add a little more calories to it without overfilling my stomach and making myself sick. So we got to the point where for years I could be stable with just a set number of foods that I was able to eat. And then 5 years into that, I had a bad reaction to one of the foods that caused severe health problems to develop. I ended up with gout from some of the stuff I was eating, and it sort of resolved with the removal of that food item. So you shift around and you try to find a replacement for that one food item. And you could experiment to try new foods to see how they would do. But it was always like, well, if you eat this and it doesn't go well, it's going to ruin at least the next 3 days of your life. And I'll tell you, there is never a good day. There's just never a good time to ruin the next 3 days. You've got to go to work. You've got to go visit family. You've got errands you need to take care of. You need to go to the grocery store and make sure you have backup foods to keep your system calm for after whatever reaction it has. And then you just get to the point where you have that moment. You have like, I've got a 3-day weekend. I could do this. And you prepare something and you set it down in front of you and you just stare at that plate. You stare and you know this is going to be a bad day. There's about a 3% chance that this isn't going to ruin the next 3 days. Do I want to go through the pain and suffering that this is going to give me? And pretty much without exception, the answer is always no, I don't want to do this. So you put it off and you put it off. And then 3 years later, you develop an allergy to one of the food items that you eat regularly. Now you have no choice. Now you've got to take a week and a half off and you need to start trying 4 or 5 items that'll replace the one that you can't eat anymore, fully knowing that at least 3 of them are going to ruin your week. And so, going through all of that, the temptation is there to just not be adventurous with food. But there's always in the back of your mind how hard it is to do all of that. And then there's this little thought back there like, I never got to try during it. I have never had a bug taco. I didn't ever get to try an ostrich egg. I've never had kangaroo meat. I will never know what that tastes like. And as much as I never had that question before, there had never been a moment where I'm like, huh, I wonder what kangaroo meat tastes like. It had never been on my mind. The moment it's impossible to do, it rankles a little bit. You kind of want to at that point, but not enough to go through the suffering you're likely to experience by trying it. So it just sits on the back of your mind as something that you will never get a shot at. Come on, dude, really? All right, let's put this bad boy together the right way. That cheese is weak. Hmm. That's a little bit more like it smells. But one of the things I will say is when you go through a lot of that, your experience of food changes drastically. Like I used to work in a kitchen. I used to work across from a baker, Larry. And when I would come in for my shift in the evening, Larry would be there baking chocolate cakes, mixing up raspberry jello, and the smell of fresh hot chocolate cake with raspberry fragrance in it. Oh my goodness. That is good. That is some, and just have it around you for like an hour and a half to permeate the space you're standing in. That's amazing. And it's so good that I know the taste of it would never be as satisfying as the smell. Sort of like these burgers smelled really good. The taste was a bit of a letdown. But if you filled a room with that smell, I could just soak in that smell for hours. That's a good smell. And so my experience of being able to enjoy a meal without ever eating it or tasting it was something I got a fair amount of pleasure out of. And so even throughout all that whole time where I wasn't able to eat, I really enjoyed making food for other people. And I'd experiment with recipes. I'd always have to have a taste tester with me because I know even just to taste, like I've had days where like eating a peanut a peanut, not like a handful of peanuts, not like a spoonful of peanut butter, but a peanut ruined my day. And it wasn't an allergy. It was just literally, it just shredded my insides. And so, like, and most foods did that. I do remember working in the kitchen one time where I would make my own special food because it was the only thing I could eat while on shift. I went over to one of the areas where they were frying up food where I could get food fried up for me. And the woman who I oftentimes play food recipe games with while we were in the kitchen, she was fixing up my food the same way she worked with a lot of the food of the other people who went through and got food there. And so I'd watch like a hawk. And she was chit chatting with me, and I was chit chatting with her, and I'm watching everything she's doing, making sure none of the ingredients that she puts in other people's food go into mine that'll ruin me. And she was chit chatting so much that she just forgot and took a ladle full of chicken broth, and the starches in the chicken broth would ruin me. And I frantically went, "No, no, no, no!" And she like I said it as loud and as fast and as vocally as possible, and but she was just in such a rhythm. It just and I went, "No, no, 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 no!" And on one occasion, she did put it in there, and it was just kind of like, "Well, I mean, I don't have to work tomorrow, so I guess I'll just suck it up." But on another occasion, I did the same. The same thing was happening, and I was like, "No, no, 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 no!" She goes, "Oh, wow, your reaction was amazing there." And I went, "Yeah, because you just held a ladle of what is essentially Drano over my food. That is going to wreck me. Don't put it there." And it was funny. We laughed about it. It was just, but it's just the way my life was for so long. And then through a series of events, I was able to start trying new foods. Now, I'm not going to pretend this stuff doesn't ruin me sometimes, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. It is still kind of painful to eat this quantity of food, though. I've got a couple of friends who I I went to visit them, and I bring my own food wherever I go because I know it's safe. It doesn't have any ingredients that are going to hurt me. And so I'm visiting them. I brought my own food in a container. It was a container a little bit bigger than this with a lid on it. And it's essentially, at that point, it was just lean ground beef, some beans, a little bit of vegetable stuff, and a little bit of seasoning. Things that I've all found I can do all right sometimes if I do the right ones in the right proportions. And so I brought this container with me, and I ate a little bit on a plate while I was visiting with them, and they were eating their dinner. And we hung out for a couple hours after that. And when it came time for me to leave, I said, "Can I get the rest of my food out of your fridge?" You mean, what do you mean the rest of your food? Like I said, like I ate some on a plate and I put the rest in your fridge, like you said I could. Because you didn't eat all of that? And I'm like, I can't, I can't eat all of this. This is a full days of food. This is 2 or 3 meals worth of food. Because no wonder you're so small. I'm 6 foot too, but they're a little more robust than I am in shape. He in particular actually reacted by saying like, That's a snack. That's not a meal. I'm like, okay, you can call it whatever you want, but I have about 3 or 4 of those in a day, and that's about as good as I'm gonna be able to be. So when I eat all of this, and I tell you, this is this is hard. This is way more than I can usually handle. And I really, really try to spare that room throughout the whole day. I had a sizable breakfast today. I did kind of do myself in. I figure if I'm going to cheat today and, potentially cause some problems, I might as well have a good start to the day and enjoy it. But so I had a bigger breakfast today, but I was hungry within like 2 or 3 hours. But it's carb heavy, so kind of goes through my system fast. Um, but So I was like, I need a snack. So I had something spicy today for lunch. I think the spices made my stomach feel full pretty much since then. It was just like a small snack. It wasn't even like a quarter of a meal, but it did sort of kill my appetite. I will say, adding that onion ring to that little burger thing was pretty good. I still feel like it's missing something. Like that burger, the meat patty isn't the best, and it's very thin. There's a lot more roll to that than there needs to be. The proportions of everything on that were off. Oh, yeah, maybe we freed our little room with that. Ooh, excuse me. All right, so now the first thing I'm going to say about this steak and cheese is this is small, and I'm actually kind of happy it's small. That's about what I'm going to be able to handle. But who packed the meat in there? Did you seriously just slap it all in the middle and call it good? And where are the onions? Philly steak and cheese used to be one of those things that, like, it was a rare good treat to get a real Philly steak and cheese when I was younger. It was also much, much bigger when I was younger. Let's just do that right away. I will never understand the obsession with 3 times as much bread as filling. Like, how are you tasting anything other than bread? That's immediately better. I'd almost say this would be good. Beef, onion, cheese, maybe some peppers. It's almost sacrilegious to put a little jalapeno in there. Um, in a flatbread. That's what it needs to be on. These massive rolls are just no, it ruins it. And maybe that's a flavor change for me. It's one of the things I did experience after I got through all of that I went through uh, years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I had to go in for a procedure, and part of that was um, to not have anything in your system when you go in for the procedure. Well, since all of these things would have made me sick, that's one way to get everything out of your system. So I did kind of that. But I basically made a list of all the foods I hadn't eaten in 10 years. And I went out and bought some before, like the week before, and just started to get ready. And those few days beforehand, I sat down and said, all right, I'm going to eat some of these things now. And some of them didn't make me sick. So I knew I could potentially add them to the list of things I could dabble with occasionally. Doing it too often, they'll make you sick no matter what you do. But I could add them to the list of like special occasion food items. The other thing I discovered was many of the things that I was familiar with, things that I ate when I was younger, they're not good. Like, it's not just that they're like, oh, my tastes have changed. Like, I don't think they were good when I ate them before, but there was nothing stopping me from just wolfing it down as if nothing mattered. You just pig out on just it was so surprising. Like 10 years without being able to eat food, you have fond memories of like, oh, these pieces of chocolate were so good, and then you sit down and you eat them and like, this chocolate is terrible. This is a chocolate flavored candle. Why does this taste like candle wax with chocolate flavoring in it? This is terrible. And it's like maybe some of it is I've had some experiences with dietary changes before in my life where I went 2 to 3 weeks without anything sweet in my diet, even to the degree of no breads, pastas, or starches. And then after that time period, like sitting down at a table with sliced cooked carrots and butter, like buttered carrots, they're like candy. Like when you haven't had just a mott of any carbohydrate in 3 weeks, and you have a slice of steamed and buttered carrot slices, it's like a candy. It is sweet and delicious. So you're more sensitive to individual tastes in what you're doing. And I feel like there's a certain sense deadness when you can eat things on a regular basis. Like I know a lot of people who just like the only thing I can drink really for the most part, like part of it's I'll explain it in a second, but the only thing I can drink is water. But I know people who I don't think in the last 7 years have had a regular glass of water. It's always like a juice, a milk, a coffee, a tea, um, like a Kool-Aid. It's always got a flavoring added to it, even if it's a sugar-free flavoring additive. Like, have you had just a plain glass of water in any of the last few weeks? And it's just like everything has flavor added to it. And you can't, like, some of those people that I know that eat that way, they get to the point where, like, if it doesn't have those flavorings, it tastes wrong or weird to them, and they don't enjoy it. It's not comfortable for them. Now, I mean, there's some of that, but there's also just like the realization that, like, you're so used to what you're eating or drinking that you don't know it tastes bad because that's just what your body knows liquids or solids are supposed to taste like. Like, you can have a bowl of fresh spinach and romaine cut up with a few slices of olive, crumble of feta, and you take a little bit of lemon and you just squeeze it over top of it. And people are like, "You're not gonna put any dressing on that?" I'm like, "I put a squeeze of lemon on it." They go, "That's not enough. You need some fat in there." I'm like, "Why would I need the fat from like an oil?" It's like I'm not fat averse, but like it's not adding anything to it. It's just lubricating the noodles that the lettuce at that point. And I go, but it like it can also spread out the flavor of the lemon or the vinegar you use. And I'm like, I'm not using any vinegar. You know, why not? I'm like, because it doesn't need it. A little bit of lemon will be all it needs. Like, it occurred to me that, like, legitimately, you add oil to the whole salad to make everything wetter and spread further, and then you add vinegar because the oil cuts the flavor from the vinegar, so you add more of the vinegar than you would if you just done a little bit of vinegar or a little bit of lemon juice. Oh, so you're just adding things that interfere with each other until you're stacking so much on here that you've got a full on thick, goopy sauce that you're pouring all over every vegetable you've ever eaten, and you're caking on a caramelized goop onto all your meat. I'm like, do you even know what the meat tastes like anymore? If I gave you an uncoated piece of meat, would you be able to get satisfaction and pleasure out of the taste of the meat? And so, like, my taste changed drastically. I should probably actually, that meat's not bad. It's a heavily processed shaved beef or steakum or whatever they make them out of, but it's seasoned, and I think it has the onion in it. Because I know shaved steak. I handled pounds of shaved steak when I worked in the kitchen. Here's a case. Here are 3 cases, 5 cases of, you know, 5 pounds of shaved steak. Could you portion those out to a certain number of ounces per steak and cheese sandwich that we need? So they're pre-sorted into packets that we can just put on there. That and onions. Hey, nice to see you. Go grab a 50-pound bag of onions and start chopping. You don't cry after about the first 300 pounds of onions that you do in a week. You get immune to it. I don't know if I'm still immune to it. It's been a few years. But the other consequence of that is you reek of onions for days. It soaks into your pores. But yeah, anyway, so like the taste of things, like it's drastically changed when you're able to taste all the aspects of it. There were some foods that Like, it was so nice to be able to taste again. But there were about 5 of those, and there were, like, 12 things that I used to love that were just ruined. Well, they weren't even really ruined, I just woke up to the fact that they were never good. And I'm sorta ashamed to say some of the things that tasted so good and still good were junk food. Like, a Dorito still tastes amazing. Like, that corn chip smell with a little bit of that nacho cheese seasoning or whatever they use for that, and the Cool Ranch ones too. Now, they're like, I could smell them across a room and go, "Oh, oh, that smells nice." That and somebody eating Skittles. Skittles were another one that if I smelled somebody eating them in the room, I really did enjoy that smell. I'm not proud of that because those are not healthy foods. They're not good for you. They're not the things you should be craving. Like somebody should bite into a juicy pear and you should smell it and go, that smells good because that's real food. I just smacked my ankle. Holy crap. That hurt a lot. Mm, but yeah, so one of the foods that was on my to try list, and I tried it, and is still on my favorite list. Sushi, like maka sushi, um, or a good bluefin tuna roll, sushi roll. Um, those those were so good, but that's another case of like they still taste good to me, but they did taste a little bit different, and part of that difference for me was interesting to realize that eating a sushi roll before I got sick. mm, Before I became sick, eating a sushi roll was taking the small cup of soy sauce, mixing in a small wad of wasabi to just the right levels. You take your little pieces of rolls and dip them in that and let it sponge in a little bit at the bottom, and you eat it that way. After I became sick, I could taste wasabi and I could taste soy without touching either of them to the sushi rolls. And adding any more would have ruined it for me. So I was catching hints of the rice wine vinegar and a little bit of honey in the rice. Probably not honey, I think. It's been a while. Um, but I could taste the ingredients to the food. And so it would feel like a sacrilege to taint that with some overmasking, overly powerful fragrance or flavor. And so my real approach to a lot of these foods these days, I'm not eating any more of that roll. Roll's not good. It's bad bread. It's like really, really cheap bread. But a lot of my relationship with food has changed enough to be able to savor and enjoy the flavors in a food. So when I sometimes make like beans and beef and season it with some seasonings, generally speaking, the seasoning level I would use is about one half to one quarter as much as most other people just do as a regular seasoning of their taco stuff. And that's not like, I'm only using a little salsa. No, I'm talking like just the seasoning of the meat. Like if you go to the store and you get the seasoning packet for a taco, it's usually like 1 pound of ground meat, one packet of seasoning, and that's it. For me, it's about 2.5 pounds of ground beef and 36 ounces of refried beans with the seasoning and all of that. And that's kind of the right level of seasoning for me. So like I find a lot of the food industry prepares seasoning clearly not to my taste level. They over season a lot of things, which is funny because those White Castle burgers were definitely under seasoned, but they were also under meated too. Mm, I gotta say, a good onion ring. I'd take onion rings over fries any day. I haven't had a fried clam in a while either. I used to love fried clams. There was this restaurant we used to go to when I was a kid. It was back when I was real young and my mother was completing her master's in education. My dad burnt water on his night to take care of us. So it became a tradition that every night she was away at the master's program once a week, we'd go to a restaurant in town and get dinner. Boy, oh boy, did I love fried clams. I loved them, and I ate them, and I ate them, and I ate them, and I think I was on the edge of overeating them over the course of a year or so. That I think my interest was waning, but I was unwilling to admit it. And then I got a batch of those fried clams that have that green paste inside them. Like nobody cleaned out the clams before they battered and fried them or something. I was like, ugh. And that kind of did it in for the. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If you're eating while watching this, I am so sorry. My bad. My apologies. But that sort of did in clams for me. I sort of had a similar experience a while back with lobster. where one of the last few years that I could have whatever I wanted for a birthday dinner, I had a lobster tail. I can't even remember what it was. It was like I want to say it was like a red or a yellow grit inside the lobster tail, and I just kind of, okay, nope, not doing that again for a while. But I've actually had some lobster since then that wasn't bad. Never had an issue with shrimp. I did get my sort of accidentally, sort of like being a jerk older brother. I did kind of spoil shrimp for my sister. I was just joking around, teasing her about the texture of shrimp. And yeah, she wasn't able to enjoy that after that. I always felt a little bad about that. It's still kind of funny though. And then, yeah, I like seafood. I don't know how I would feel about clams these days. Fried clams in particular. I also had a thing for a very long time, like New England clam. Don't give me any of that red clam chowder garbage. New England clam chowder. Like, look, I get it. Maybe you ran out of what you needed to make the regular chowder, so you threw in a couple cups of tomato soup to make it go further. I'm messing with you. Relax. Um, but a New England clam chowder, I had that as a snack 2, 3 times a week, every week for like 8 months. I really, really did like clam chowder, but I think I overdid it. Sort of like I overdid peanut butter and jelly when I was younger. I can remember an entire summer I ate peanut butter and jelly every day for lunch all summer long and drank from the garden hose. We played in the hot sun, and forever in my mind, there will be an echo of hose water flavor every time I eat a PB&J sandwich. God, a fond experience. Let's see. What are some of my other favorites? Like simple things for the most part. Oh, I did eggs Benedict a lot. I actually got good enough at making eggs Benedict that for a long time. Like I would just make myself an eggs Benedict brunch a couple times a week. It's a weird thing. When I find a food I really like, I will eat it to exhaustion. Um, let's give that corn dog another try, shall we? I think I like it better cold. The hot dog is more present. I don't know why I use that hand gesture for that. But yeah, the meat is a little more present in that. It's still pretty cornbready. I don't understand the obsession with breadings. Like the some of the people I know who are struggling with changing their diet to solve some of their health problems. Like one of them, like he can't stand fish. Okay, you don't have to like fish. It's healthy for you. He goes, I know it's healthy. Like, but he can't stand it to the degree that like you crack open a can of tuna fish, he doesn't want it poured into the sink because he doesn't want that anywhere near any surfaces. Like when you're draining the fluid from a can of tuna fish, it, like you want you to pour it into a separate jar and take it outside the house. Like he just can't stand fish unless it's battered and fried. Oh, well, that you're not eating the fish at that point. You're enjoying the batter, the fried batter. There's just sort of like an unhealthy obsession in uh, our culture towards bread, noodles, and batter. I don't understand it. I mean, even when I could eat stuff when I was younger, I usually favored stuff like a poultry, vegetables, maybe like a potato or corn, which are not vegetables. Uh, Potatoes, sorta. From a culinary standpoint, potatoes are a starch. They are technically a vegetable family, so they're not a grain and they're not a fruit. Oh, you know what else I would have liked? Stuffed mushrooms. Those were always really good. Although, I'm trying to remember. There are ways you can make them without breadcrumbs, but I'm trying to remember what forms. It's usually like a cheese, some vegetables, something starchy. So you could do like a zucchini or a squash. But in that sense, the breading you're using isn't the overpowering dominant aspect of the food. I mean, it's not a dinner roll with a mushroom in the middle and some seasoning around it. It's a mushroom with some cheese, a few herbs and spices, maybe a little meat, some butter, and then some like breadcrumbs. Just like this need to coat or fill or just the sheer quantity of bread. It's not healthy. It's not particularly tasty as far as I'm concerned. And environmentally, like wheat fields are not the most efficient way to go crop wise. Okay, that's disturbing. Looking at the stick hole in this hot dog, as you squeeze it, it moves like a mouth. I might be a little punchy. I've had a lot of food. Might be affecting my thinking. But environmentally speaking, doing something like on an acre of land, you can use permaculture farming methods with a few raised beds to get all the vegetables, trees to grow all the fruits and nuts that you could ever need. You can grow some flowers for pollinating insects to benefit the plants. You can grow some vines for grapes and berries. You can have a pond for fish, and it'll attract ducks. You can raise chickens on the grounds. You can grow I mean, just the eggs from chickens would be amazing. And then, like, if you raise some turkeys or something and just sustainably harvest the meat from those creatures, the fish, chicken, and turkeys, maybe some ducks every now and then, or a goose. Conceivably, you could probably raise a goat or two for milk, and you can do pretty much all of that on an acre, acre and a half of land, and get enough food for 5 people. The moment you need to add grain, like corn, you might be able to get a little bit, but like wheat, you just don't have the space for a wheat field. Not to be used the way we make things covered in bread or any of that stuff. We just don't have the means to do that on a farm. But other than those things, on a farm in America, a 1 acre farm, permaculture farming, you will not starve and you will not be nutrient deficient from everything you can grow on that 1 acre space. You just can't grow grain crops. You can't grow oats. Might be able to do a little barley. But yeah, just like buckwheat, a few things like that. Like the dependence on cereals and grains. I mean, I get where they came from. Once upon a time, we all lived in Europe. Well, not all of us. Some of us came from other places, but once upon a time, there were a fair number of us who were in Europe. And there were acres and acres of land, kilometers and kilometers of land that existed within kingdoms. And so long as your kingdom had enough serfs to work the land, you could tax them in vegetables and meat and hunt your own game. Those peasant farmers, they needed calories for something. So you bulked out their food supply with grasses and grains. And when those grasses and grains had a bad winter, plants wouldn't grow well, or the poor spring for growing. The poor starved. Until we found America. We discovered things like potatoes. The funny thing about potatoes, they're underground. So those early spring frosts that stuck around didn't hurt the potatoes so much. That was until we systemized our potato usage so much that there was only one strain of potatoes that was very susceptible to a plague that wiped out most of the potato crop in Ireland. So you probably heard about that one at some point. Yeah, our relationship to food has been weird for a very long time. Oh man, I am running out of space. I sort of ran out of space a little while ago, but I keep pushing my luck here. Overall, I'd say most of this is pretty good, but at the same time, it's not really good. Like, I don't know that. All right, so the onion rings, I would repeat. If I could do the steak and cheese on a flatbread, I'd probably do that again. Fries are okay. I think there's a better way to do that. Mac and cheese was meh. It wasn't really all that great. Corn dogs, rather just have a hot dog. Chicken nuggets are pretty good. I don't know that they need the breading. I would go for a little like uh, nuggets of chicken without any breading on it. And I could do like a marinade on it, sort of like a chicken kebab. Yeah, I probably like that better. Now, to be fair, I might be being a bit of a jerk because I didn't have any condiments for any of these. Not, I'm not a huge fan of ketchup um, out of a bottle anymore. I do sometimes like a good mustard, but I think I've gotten a bit of a snob on that one too. Like the French's mustard, you might as well just use like a balsamic vinegar on your fries. But like a good brown mustard or a honey mustard or a wasabi mustard, like those are also pretty good. And I don't know that mustard on fries is the way to go. I mean, fries are usually like a ketchup kind of thing. Just don't do well with tomatoes. Tomatoes cause me joint pain. I don't think the return on that is worth it. I've never had poutine. I'd be curious to try and see how that works. Okay, I'm sure it'd probably not be good for my stomach, and it's not an overly healthy sounding dish. But you're not eating it for that. Be curious to see what the taste is, the taste profile. Now, I know some people put like mayonnaise on their fries. I knew some French people who were fond of that at some point. Uh, I struggle to imagine that being something I would enjoy. Although I have done Russian dressing on fries at one point. That's not super bad. But I think the ketchup and the pickle relish, the sweet relish in a Russian dressing makes that work. I think just plain mayonnaise might be a little off for my taste. I do like a balsamic vinegar on them. Maybe something like a yeah, like I keep going back to like tomato base, like a salsa might be nice on fries. Barbecue sauce would be good on fries, and I can kind of understand the mayonnaise. Like I can see like ranch being good on fries. Well, oof, I'd be pushing the edge, I think. Although I have made a bacon cheddar ranch twice baked potato before, and that was pretty good. So like you make a ranch dressing with bacon in it. Bake a potato. You scoop out the innards of the potato. You mix in the dressing and the potato. You stick it back into the hollowed out shell of the baked potato, and then you can mix in some shredded cheddar as well, and then you just cover the top of it in cheddar. Put it back in the oven and bake it some more so that cheese is melty and crumbly, almost crunchy on top at certain points. That's a good deal. Doing something similar to fries might be good. And there's another potato dish I made a few years ago for some friends of mine. A friend of mine and a former friend of mine, I should say. Um, and I kind of wonder how that would turn out on fries. Was thinly sliced fried in a little olive oil, dusted in rosemary and sage. Not dusted, but sprinkled with rosemary and sage. And then flipped over, sprinkled a little more rosemary and sage, and diced tomato on top. The side that's already been fried and is crispy, the underside is getting crispy inside the pan that you're doing it in. Put the tomato on the crispy side, that's there with some oil. And once the bottom is crispy again, you pull it off the heat and you put on some mozzarella cheese on top to melt on the remaining heat. And that was really, really tasty. And I bet you it'd be pretty good on fries. It'd be unusual. You don't encounter that very often. Mm. Okay, I'm kind of at the wall. I keep wanting to try to finish off the food, but I shouldn't keep pushing that. I'm gonna pop. I thought I did pretty good at keeping this small and making it look bigger, but I'm wondering if I actually made it big and made it look smaller. Whew. I'm right up on the edge of so full, I'm starting to get a headache. So I'm gonna cut it right about here. Thank you for joining me. I don't imagine I'll be doing a mukbang for a long while still, but about a month from actually, about 2 months from now, you could probably expect to see another food-based post from me live. I might be debating. I might be doing a cooking, I guess I call it a cooking show, like a live cooking of a recipe, followed by a tasting of it. I'm still debating. I'm still figuring that one out. But I got 2 months. I'll figure it out. Thank you for joining me. This coming week will be a visual arts week, so I will be doing some art each day of the coming week. Oh, that starts tomorrow, doesn't it? I better get my stuff together. All right, have a good one. It's creeping up faster than I thought it was.